Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's do that. Thanks, Avery.
Okay, so next up is Jerod Brennen. So he's going to present Hacking Identity Pen Tester's Guide to IAM. Right, so he's going to talk about some cool things here as well. So he likes to share his cybersecurity stuff as well. So we'll hear what he has to say. You got an hour, so
All right.
We're followed by lunch.
If I wrap up early, I'm not going to go over. Do not stay.
Yeah, so Mike's here. So if you want to take that, if you want to roam.
That's the. I'll talk loud, and then this is.
That's for the camera.
Perfect.
But the camera's going to be pointed at the podium.
Yeah, I'll come back and forth, and this it's not mute, right?
A little bit, but not too much.
Yeah.
And then forward, backward, and
Perfect.
and down is your. See that?
Yep. All right. Going on audio for the live. Everybody hear me? I went to school to be a music teacher. I studied voice for 4 years. If I can't project to a room this size, that was a lot of wasted money. So as John mentioned, I'm Jerod. It's been a while since I've been out this way, so I'm glad to have a chance to come back out. Short version for people who I haven't met before. I went to school to be a music teacher. Decided that I don't have the patience for helicopter parents or the bureaucracy of public school administration, but was poor. So was trying to find a way to make money so that I could support my family. I've been a geek my whole life. My first hack was playing the X-Wing flight simulator. I got angry that I couldn't play the advanced missions unless I beat all the missions up to it. So I figured out how to go in and modify the right config files to give me all the medals to open up all the missions. Did I mention I'm also a gamer? My background in InfoSec has been hardware support, telephone support, EDI administration on AIX and Solaris boxes. Got pissed off at my boss for throwing under me the bus. There was a security job open, and hallelujah, that was the beginning of all the fun stuff. So I've done InfoSec in an entry-level analyst role. I spent a little bit of time in retail building out a security program. Even though they just wanted PCI compliance, I was far from satisfied with that approach. Jumped into consulting for a bit, burned out. So I stepped into education, higher ed. A couple of years doing third-party risk management. A consulting company came back and said, hey, we can pay you more. And I said, all right, I'm fresh, let's do it. And then I had a chance recently to make a move to the vendor side, the first time I've been on the vendor side, which is a new thing for me, with One Identity. And One Identity has been very supportive of me continuing to do all the teaching and speaking stuff that I do. And I thought, well, is there something I can take from all my experience of consulting and ops and management and third-party risk management and tie it all together? And I found a pretty cool stat that I don't know whether or not I have in this slide. But F5 did a report in December. I think they dropped it. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's the lessons learned from a decade of data breaches. And they found that of all the data breaches they were investigating, 86% of the breaches, the initial attack vector was either an application security weakness or an identity weakness. Because attackers are not always brilliant and sophisticated as much as we'd like to give them credit. Sometimes they're just looking for the low-hanging fruit, right? The path of least resistance. And if they can find an easy way to get in and pop a company, yeah, they will absolutely take the easy path. It's the quickest, easiest way for them to accomplish their goal. And so what I put together with this talk is, if you are a pen tester, so if I can see show of hands, who's red team pen test? Most of your job is attacking and breaking. All right, so flip it around. Blue teamers. most of your job is defense. All right, I think we're a little more blue team heavy today. Red team gets to do all the fun, sexy stuff, and blue team has to sit in the shadows and try to keep everything functional and working. And having worked on both sides of the house, I thought, well, could I take this, how do we protect ourselves with that identity focus, and look at the actual pen testing that I did and the consulting I did helping people understand how to defend, and then the day-to-day management of an identity and access management system, and say, can I help people understand? Can I take that purple team approach? And that's what I put together. So I'm here to teach the red teamers some additional tricks to put in your toolkit if you're not using them already. Same with the blue teamers. I want to show you what we do when we're pen testing and attacking. I want to help you understand the things that will have the biggest bang for your buck in terms of time and effort in implementing some of these controls. Oh, look there. I did have the stat. I've got a link. Also, every time I put a deck like this together, I put too much information in it on purpose. I want people to be able to come back in 3 months, 6 months when you're actually interested in, I was at the anniversary and Jerod was doing that talk and I have no idea what he said. If only I could go get that information. It's all here. This deck is on SlideShare and Speaker Deck, which is like the GitHub version of SlideShare, and I've got links at the very end for you to help you find it. But I link out to this report because if you're trying to have that conversation internally about why is application security important and why is identity and access management important, this is real world data that you can use. It's not conjecture. Is that the right word? We'll say it is. One of the challenges that we have in protecting identity is that the attack surface is ridiculous. Robbie was spot on. Open source intelligence gathering can show you so much. If you want to target an organization, and if you don't believe me about what I'm about to say, I'll give you some talks to look up. You can just gather information through passive intelligence gathering. So never touching the target systems, never tripping alerts, never leaving a footprint in their logs that you were even there. You can often gather enough information to stage either a very successful social engineering attack, or in some cases, a very quick, I'm going to call it like a impersonation attack from the outside, where you actually jump right from I collected all this information to I'm going to pop one of your systems on the internet. And unfortunately, some of this risk exists because we have to have this information on the internet for these things to work, right? The whole notion of I'm at my laptop and I type in google.com, and somehow, somewhere, something knows that when I put those words in, I want information on a server somewhere on the other side of the US to come back and show up on my screen. So I've got all these network devices in the middle that have to know how to talk to each other. My computer has to know how to take those words and translate them into an IP address. And all of this information has to be publicly available for this entire process to work. So what you'll find is there's a lot of information about IPs and domains and subdomains and SPF records, email trust, that we have had to publish in order to function on the internet as technologically connected businesses. Attackers take advantage of that same information. One of the things that I bump into also is there are certain things that you have to publish on the internet, and there are certain things that end up there that you don't. I did a pen test for an organization, very large organization out of state. And I always go out to Pastebin. If you don't know Pastebin, it's a place where you can just share little snippets of text. Rock simple. If I am a criminal and I have compromised a password store, user credentials, username, password dump, I might put a little bit out on Pastebin and say, here's proof that I've got the goods. If you want everything, Bitcoin, all the things, and it's yours. So I will go out to Pastebin and all the accounts that have already been compromised. And I found a woman at this organization was using her company email address on some website that wasn't company related. I have no idea what website was popped. I just know I had username, and it was actually an encoded password, encoded and hashed. But I took the value, and I want to say it was a base 64 decoded, and then I went to an MD5 hash search engine, something like Red Noise, and I said, "Tell me if you've got a match on this hash," and it did. It was a 6-character alpha, all lowercase, a person's name. It was a guy's name. And I did a little bit more OSINT on this woman through social media and found it was one of her kids. So what I had as an attacker was a password that was tied to her company email account on some site. I can't use this to get into the organization directly because the company I was attacking had complex password policies enforced on their interfaces. So there's no way in hell there's going to be a 6-character alpha password that gets into a corporate system by itself. But if I take this kid's name and make the first letter uppercase, and I start adding some numbers to the end, maybe an exclamation point, the most popular special character to show up in passwords, I'm going to be able to put together a pretty short list of likely passwords, because if she's using that password here in the public space, I've already got a lead on what kind of passwords are going to work in the real world. But don't even get me started on stuff like Ashley Madison. How many people have an account on Ashley Madison? Yeah, see, you're good. You don't admit it. I don't need to know. Judgment-free zone. You do your thing. I'm staying out of it. For folks who are unaware of Ashley Madison, it's a website where you can engage in discrete extramarital conversations and affairs, consenting adults, not touching it. Discretion is kind of important on a website like that. So using your company email that is first name.last name at company.com is dog-ass stupid. I have no other words for that. But there was a lot. If you go and look at the dump, because Ashley Madison was compromised and this password dump goes public and a lot of researchers tap into it, and suddenly I'm finding all these people using their company email addresses on non-company sites. And you might look at that and say, Jerry, that's ridiculous. I would never use my company email on a non-company site. Yeah, but you're saying that because you're security professionals and you think like that and you're wired like that. For people who don't want multiple email accounts, for people where their only email account is their work email account, they're going to use it other places. So we have information leaking out there, and oh my God, social media quizzes, right? I'll ask the question. The latest one was royal wedding. Right? What's your royal wedding name? Does anybody know the combination here for this one? It was like it got real obscure. Your maternal grandmother's maiden name, and then a couple of other things. And it's just one of those goofy, silly, fun little quizzes that people love to do on Facebook. What about your porn name? Does anybody know I don't want to know your porn name, but does anybody know the formula for your porn name?
There's a couple of them out there, aren't there?
A couple, yeah. There's one that I tap into. Well, there's one that I know of. The one that I know of is your pet's name, your first pet, and the street you grew up on. Yeah. You're like, yeah. I say, all right. You're with me. I don't want to tell you my porn name for 2 reasons. Number one, it works. Again, judgment-free zone, don't judge me, but if I were ever to pursue a career path like that, I've already got a name that might work out. But the other thing is, if I'm trying to reset a password on an internet-facing password reset portal, most of these utilities are going to ask people the same secret questions over and over. What street did you grow up on? What was your first pet's name? What was your mother's maiden name? And as these tools are getting more obscure with some of the questions they have, like what was your maternal grandmother's maiden name, quizzes are popping up on social media asking the same damn questions. Not a coincidence. The publicly available information I mentioned is how the internet works. And then the third factor that's complicating our job is this increasing reliance on software as a service. I have the ability to control the things that are tied to my internal directory. But as somebody goes out and signs up for the fancy website that does the thing that IT is too slow on helping them build, I lose all of my controls. I'm not monitoring it. I trust that they're doing some monitoring. I can tell you from doing third-party risk assessments in the higher ed space, I would do OSINT gathering against every SaaS solution that crossed our desk. And part of my OSINT gathering, once I had a good picture, I would bleed over into semi-active intelligence gathering. So real quick, in OSINT, passive doesn't touch anything. Semi-passive means you're interacting with the target organization, but you're doing it like a legitimate user or service. You're not doing anything that should be considered suspicious. Active means you're all out scan. That's your Nmap, that's your vuln scans, that's more aggressive stuff that should be tripping alarms. I would create accounts in these software as a service solutions and then just navigate to get a feel for what the end user experience looked like. So this semi-passive, semi-active intelligence gathering would always lead me to the password reset page. And I had a vendor that we were testing that when I reset my password to the number 1, single character, as non-complex can be, it worked. And recently, because I'm a fan of password vaults, I was going through my password vault and found that I still had a lot of these passwords I had stored when I was doing these assessments. So I thought, I'll just go ahead and clean these up. But security Jerod thought, I'll check them first and then I'll clean them up. And I still had an active account 2 years after my relationship with the organization was no longer in effect. I still had an active account in the system where you could log in with the number 1 as my password. Now, it was a system that when I was testing it, it was non-prod write. I never used it as an end user, so I wasn't putting any special data in there. But if somebody else had shared data with my account, that's an attack vector through software as a service that internally I would hope I have a better handle on, but that's not always the case. And as attackers start to find success with these attacks, it's not always, I'm going to come in, swipe all the things, and leave. If I can come in and camp out, I can be stealing stuff day after day after day. If you have personally identifiable information on an internal network today, and I come in, get into an internal system, find that database, take it, I have a finite number of records that are valid up into the date that I stole the stuff. But if I stay on your network and go into that database and send another query every day, every record you add over time, I'm collecting as well. So it becomes a source of information for me. And so an attacker who can get on your internal network, camp out, look like a normal user and just keep swiping stuff is going to do that as long as they possibly can. The other thing that I learned, and I'll be real upfront about this, I am not a rock star pen tester. I can hold my own. I do some basic pen testing. When it comes to writing custom Python exploits, that's not my thing. And I've got guys that I've worked with over the years who amaze me at the level of knowledge they have and the humility that they can do the things that they can do and not just not be walking around with mad swagger. But I've seen somebody I've worked with a couple of times follow the same process again and again and again. And I had worked on tests with this guy where he would go in the morning of the first day as an unauthorized outsider. So no internal network access, no creds, no anything, the true attacker. By lunchtime, he's got domain admin. And on a 5-day, 10-day pen test, that gets real awkward with the customer. Yeah, we're done. We're still going to take all your money. What else do you want us to do? And so he was real big on pillage. Let me go in and see what I can take. I saw him on another pen test. He was able to go in and take over an ESX host, right? So he just started taking all the VMs off the host, and he called me and said, Jerod, I'm out of storage space on my hard drive. Do you think I've got enough? I'm like, what are you up, terabyte drive you're carrying around? Yeah, that will make the point to the customer that there's an opportunity to improve their controls. My takeaway, though, is that this process of coming in from the outside and getting in is repeatable and documented. And as soon as somebody figures out how to do it one place, they take it and target another organization and target another and target another. And so the challenge that we have as professionals, security professionals, the defenders, is we are up against more sophisticated attackers. I mean, they may not be brilliant in terms of coming up with these attacks, but as soon as somebody figures it out and they start sharing it out, it's just, can I follow a set of instructions? The last piece here that throws me off is that this stuff isn't new. If you look at my favorite way to get in from the outside, password spraying, which I'll talk about in a minute, Black Hills was writing about that years ago. I go back to how long's Mimikatz been around? 4 or 5 years? You get Mimikatz on the internal network, and if they're not watching for it, you've got creds. So not only do we have an increasing sophistication and repetitive process approach to penetration testing and attacking, but all the technology and all the tools that they could be using have been out in the space for a while. But I am not a pessimist. I'm a realist more than anything. But it's become painfully apparent to me, especially in my consulting days, that there are some basic, simple things we can do to get ahead of that if we just understand what the actual attacks look like. A lot of that stuff comes from the identity space. So I just want to real quick go over some basic IAM stuff here. IAM, identity and access management, identity management. There are a lot of 3-letter, 4-letter acronyms you're going to bump up against. High level, it's who is the person, right? How do I know that Adrian is Adrian? If somebody presents themselves to a web application or VPN portal, is it really the person I think it is? And that's the whole authentication process. And then authorization, right? After somebody logs in, what can they do? If I'm an employee and I come into VPN, you give me access to the entire network. Maybe you shouldn't, but you do. But if I'm a consultant or a contractor and I come in over VPN, you only give me access to the systems that I should have access to, or the applications, based on the language of my contract. Managing that life cycle, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is part of this identity management. And as we started to go out to these systems that live outside of our network, the language I use when I'm talking to any organization, what websites do you log into to do your job? You can talk to anybody from the C-level on down and ask that simple question: what websites do you log into to do your job? And you're going to get a real quick picture of the software as a service applications that have made their way into your organization. In the identity and access management day-to-day, everything is about provisioning and deprovisioning. I want to give things to people. I want to take things away. I've got a new hire starting on Monday. I've got to make sure that they have all the things they need when they get in here to do their job. They need an AD account, they need email, they need access to line of business applications, they need a phone, they need a laptop, they need things in order to do their job. That's provisioning. Deprovisioning is they don't work here anymore. I need to take it away. They move, right? They used to be in IT, now they're in finance. Do they still need admin rights on the finance servers? Maybe not, hopefully not. And that deprovisioning process becomes a cost management thing for organizations. I don't want to pay cell phone bills for somebody who quit 6 months ago. And you will find people who don't mention that they're still using their company's cell phone, because that's free money. If I have somebody who leaves the organization on unfriendly terms, the rapidity with which I can deprovision is a huge freaking deal, right? I have a sysadmin who's responsible for, give me a city, San Francisco public transportation. We had that one, right? Was that public transportation or, there have been a few examples of sysadmins who leave and say, you know what? I don't care if I'm going to jail. I'm going to do some damage. But if you've got the ability to deprovision their access before it gets to that point, you minimize risk to the organization. And more importantly, you minimize risk to the people who depend on the services and products that organization provides. I used to work public utility. It's one thing when I was in retail and we sold t-shirts. But if somebody got in and did damage at the organization in the middle of a blizzard here in Ohio, people are going to die. I'm going to have older citizens who are just, they're trying to get by, but they might be more vulnerable to changes in temperature. And if they're without temperature for 3 days and we're in the teens, that's a bad situation for people. That's loss of life. That's not a data breach. That's something else entirely. So provisioning, deprovisioning, and then entitlements are the things that we give them, and attributes are the, how would I describe this? In a directory, if you have flags that say this person is allowed to have those things, then that's an attribute, right? I'm Jerod. What department am I in? I'm in IT. That means I'm allowed to have these things. If you understand that, especially when you compromise, and this is for the red teamers, you compromise a directory system or you compromise an application, understanding provisioning, deprovisioning, entitlements, and attributes is help you going to zero in on the high value targets. It's going to help you identify where you can do damage. And from a life cycle standpoint, people come into the organization, when that relationship starts, that's when a lot of the provisioning happens. You build out authentication, authorization, and my favorite as a pen tester, self-service. And some password management functionality. And then you've got ideally somebody coming around every 3 months saying, why do we still have people who can log in even though they don't work here anymore? Your auditors keeping us honest. And then deprovisioning when the relationship ends. This cycle is overly simplified. When you think of an employee, yeah, that's what it looks like. But what about volunteers? What about healthcare systems that have doctors who are kind of on a God complex thing where, you know, they're going to do what they want to do, or higher ed institutions with tenured faculty, right? Yeah, what are you going to do? Kick me out? So there are challenges with managing these different employees. And then even I'm an employee and I'm on paternity leave. I'm on maternity leave. We're going through layoffs. And I've got a subset of employees who need access to HR resources so I can position them to find another job, but they don't need access to everything. And since they know they're going to be without a job in the next 4 to 6 weeks, they're a higher risk population of taking advantage of the access they have. But the cycle holds true, but understanding that helps you understand as an attacker where you can be more successful, and as a defender where you might want to focus. Like take, for example, help desk. If I am going to target an organization with a social engineering attack and try to get creds, if I can take advantage of the help desk, I'm going to start there. And I say that coming from retail. I worked at organization I worked for, I was there in 2008 when the economy tanked and we went through layoffs. And there were people at the company whose job it was, young men and women, early 20s, no joke, I'm not exaggerating, stand out front of the main entrance, play soccer, frisbee, pass a football back and forth, look pretty, and just wave to people coming up saying, hey dude, how you doing? Have a good one. Whole job. They were greeters. Yeah, and I look at this, and that it was a neat place to work. I'll give it that. It was odd, but it was neat. In a lot of organizations, and ours was no exception, when you're laying people off, somebody took a look at that list of greeters and said, maybe we can stand to do with a few less people in that position. And leadership said, agree, we don't need that many people in that role, but these kids live and breathe the brand. We are not going to find an employee more dedicated to our company than these kids. I am not going to just show them the door. Is there somewhere else we can put these kids? And somebody else chimes in and says, yeah, you can put them on the help desk. You ever watch the IT crowd? Yeah. So it's these are the kids who don't even know have you tried turning it on and off again. They're not quite sure how to turn the technology on. Good kids trying to do good things. And there was one kid who came over from that who actually went on to be very successful in the IT department because he came in hungry to learn, wanted to change. He's got a career in the space now. He was the exception, not the rule. So when Robbie calls the help desk up and says, hey, this is Daryl. I'm out and about, and I'm trying to log into a system. I can't get in. I need you to reset my password. If I've got that kid who's just hired to be helpful and is happy to have a job, is he more likely to fall for an attack like that than somebody in this room who's been doing this for years? Absolutely. So knowing that population, knowing what their responsibilities are, make you more effective as a red teamer. Help desk is going to be less likely to be experienced, but have access to do a lot of this endpoint management, user interaction activity. Security Operations Center folks are going to be a little more sophisticated. These are the ones who are going to be watching the logs. So as you're targeting attacks, they're the ones you're going to have to evade. If you know their technology, you know their capability. I did some work in SOX organizations where we had mainframes in play. Every day, I had to go through a list of all the failed logons against RACF and determine whether or not anything bad had happened. The minute I hired somebody else on my team, you better believe that was the first thing I gave them, because it is boring as hell. And when we grew the team and that person grew into a more senior position, we brought somebody else on, we just kept hot potato. Nobody wants to look at these logs because that process is, it's not challenging. It's not exciting. And people who want a career in security don't want boring. They don't want to be looking at the logs all day. So if you look at your attacks and say, all right, I've got to get past the people in the SOC, I'm probably not going to socially engineer them because they're not doing the same things that help desk is. But if I can slip in and look kind of normal, maybe I can get around their controls. Going after the people who are your security team, your full-time security pros, those are the harder ones to trick. We're the paid paranoids who've been doing this long enough that not only have we seen the tricks, but we've used the tricks on other people. We know what to expect. But these are the people who set the policy for the identity program. And they're the ones who are managing the identity tool set. It's not going to be the help desk on the password doing the back-end administration of a system that's automatically provisioning, deprovisioning. That's going to be foreign to that group. But it's not going to be the security team who's doing the help desk reset, or the password reset. So understand the population and use that when you're building out your attacks to be more effective. So getting into the red team stuff specifically, identity-based attacks. These are my favorite OSINT tools to start with. Now, I have a course on Pluralsight. I put a course together for them a couple of years back, performing OSINT gathering for corporate targets, where I go into this stuff in a lot more detail. Based on like the penetration testing execution standard, I really, it's like 5 hours of me geeking out about OSINT. But if I boil that down to the short list, this is what I'm going to do to get both technical information and identity information before I move on to the later attack phases. Shodan and Census, hand in hand, will give you so much information about systems that are on the internet. A lot of you have probably used Shodan. It's got port name and host, or port numbers, host names, IP addresses. Sign up for an account on Shodan. If you can buy any of the API credits, do it. John is doing a killer job with that tool, and it's so useful. Throw money his way to help him keep growing that tool. Shodan, if you use the org modifier, so org, and then in double quotes, the name of the company that you're testing, you're going to get all the IPs that are associated with that organization based on, what is this, not who is, like Aaron data. I don't know where they pull the data from, but it gives you a real quick set of IPs that may or may not still be online and services that you might be able to interact with. Census is all focused on web, HTTP, HTTPS. It gives you a lot of IPv4 based hosts. It gives you certificate information, which if you look at TLS and SSL search, you'll get good info there. But between the two, you get a really good picture. And then findsubdomains.com. I don't know how long this site's been up. I've only recently started using it. Love it. Because it shows you not just the www.mainwebsite.com, but give me the mail.website.com. Give me the peoplesoft.website.com. Give me all those applications that you've exposed to your employee population. Because as soon as I pop one set of creds, I'm going to log into each one of those. Bang, bang, bang. And you may be protecting VPN with multi-factor, But if you're not protecting all these other websites multi-factor, I'm in. The Hurricane Electric BGP toolkit, I rely on less and less. It's pretty good, but I'm able to get what I want with Shodan and Census. And they've got a limitation of like 1,000 hits based on a block of IPs. So it might be hit or miss, but it's still good. And SPF records, what is that, MX Toolbox? Yeah. I always hit SPF records when I'm targeting an organization. Why do I do that? Yeah.
It shows you who's allowed to send emails to a certain organization.
Yes, it shows me that trust. Who do I trust enough to allow those emails to pass between us unfiltered? If I go into the SPF records and they're using it appropriately, I can almost guarantee I'm going to find software as a service solutions that I'll be able to log into with a valid set of credentials. So I use that information to get an idea of systems and applications. And then on people, thank you, LinkedIn. Social engineers' dream, right? People voluntarily saying, here's where I work, here's who I work with, here's my position in the company, here are the technologies that I support, including the versions. Yeah, you can paint a picture of a company without ever touching anything but the sysadmins pages on LinkedIn. Not just sysadmins, database admins, developers, project managers. You get so much from there. Hunter.io is good for looking up email addresses. If for no other reason, show me the email format, right? Is it first dot last? Is it first initial last name? Is it some random set of characters? Pastebin I talked about. Intel techniques, hands down, well, maybe not the most robust. There's another site that I've hit up a couple of times, but I like the way Michael's got his stuff out on Intel techniques. OSINT gathering tools, not just for like systems, but a lot of social media stuff. You go to a page and if you've got somebody's Facebook identifier, right? You know their Facebook ID. He's got a page you can go and plug it in, and it's got like 30 different tools that will give you profile information about that person with just one click. And that's just one social media service. He's got a lot. He's got a virtual machine he built out called Buscador, which is, he's pretty quick about maintaining it. It's like Kali, but only OSINT, like a custom VM just for OSINT gathering. And then my two favorite tools, ReconNG and Discover. I share all these others because it's good to go through the process manually, understand context, understand how to gather it. If you want to do it all in a couple of minutes, drop Discover on your Kali instance. I don't think it's there by default yet, is it? It should be. So Tim Tomes wrote ReconNG, Lee Baird wrote Discover. I mean, those are like the project leads. But Discover, you plug in a domain name and say, go find stuff. And it takes a couple minutes, and here's everything you might want to know. It saves so much time for red teamers. And then for blue teamers, it shows you exactly what information an attacker can gather if they know how to run a Python script. And when I say not write a Python script, but discover, enter. And it brings all the info back. You take these tools and run them against your own organization, whether you're red team, blue team, you're going to get a really clear picture of all the information that's out in the public space. What I was talking about OSINT gathering, if you look up the initial ReconNG release, there were a couple of videos that Tim did that first year it came out. He's talking about getting FBI.gov credentials, username, password, without ever touching an FBI system, which is, like I say, mind-boggling, but it's the kind of thing that we see the longer we do this. That information is out there. I also am a big fan of gathering document metadata. You can use MetaGoofle if you're more Linux command line. If you're comfy in the Windows GUI space, FOCA, you throw it at a website and say, find all the documents that are available for download and download them. Once I've got them local, I want you to pull out the metadata and extract the metadata. Now, what am I going to find in the metadata? I'm going to find usernames for people who have some relationship with publishing data on the internet. Boy, if I could compromise one of those accounts, not only do I own the organization, but I can own anybody who's coming to their website to download documents. If I can inject a malicious file into that business process. FOCA will sometimes pull back internal IP information and print server information. I've never found passwords with FOCA, but I use it more than MetaGoofle, but they're both fantastic tools. And what are we looking for? You want to build out that technology stack, because as an attacker, if you find technologies that are internet facing, sometimes you can get in with no more than an admin guide. I was doing a pen test for a client years ago, and they had a PBX management system web app that was internet facing. Small company, so they didn't have extranet, they didn't have it behind a VPN. It was just, you knew the URL, you could log in and manage their phones. I found the admin interface through OSINT gathering. I Googled for the admin guide, found the default credentials, and they worked, right? Whoever had published this to the internet hadn't changed the default creds, so I'm in this system as an admin. Big deal. What can I do? That was an identity weakness. The application weakness was that the admin console, the web page, was older and hadn't been built with security in mind. They were making direct calls from one section of the web page to local Linux commands, like netstat, show me everything that's connected right now. And as I'm doing that, I used tamper data, but Paris proxy, right? Zap, you can use any kind of web proxy. I was catching the data that went from my laptop to the server and looking at what was in the HTTP request. And it was just the command itself. It was netstat dash something something. I can't remember the details. So I thought, well, what happens in a simple one, right? I said, I want to catch that. But instead of sending netstat to the server, I want to send cat/etsy/password. And sure enough, the results on screen were the contents of the Etsy password file. So now I've got a web application weakness that I can exploit to run commands on this backend server, which if they were exposing it internally, it was PBX. I don't know that it was even in a DMZ. I think it was just firewalling out, right? I'm on their internal network running commands on this box with whatever credentials that web app was running under. So if you understand the technology stack, identify the admin guides, you can usually get valid administrative privileged accounts, get in with that, and then start taking action. If you find new user and new hire how-to guides, this is, again, putting yourself in the IAM administrator, the help desk administrator. You're going to find, how do I log in for the first time? What's the default password that's given to everybody in the company? How do I log into VPN when I'm on the road, right? Do I need two-factor? Or if I need two-factor, how do I do two-factor? How do I reset my password? There's so many common questions about how do I manage my identity that people are always asking the help desk that end up in these how-to guides. And assuming that these people may not know how to log into the extranet, you will find shops that are still publishing these on a website. And all you have to do is find that file. That's where FOCA is really handy. Usernaming convention is going to come out, especially from FOCA. You'll see what their internal names are. And then all of that OSINT gathering around infrastructure is going to show you every login portal. If you just look for HTTP and HTTPS, you're going to have a pretty robust attack surface, assuming you can get one set of creds. And 80, 443, 8443, those are going to be pretty good, but Census is going to pick up some additional web-based logins that, again, you don't have to do an Nmap scan or anything to get that. And then when you've got the information and you want to start attacking, my favorite attack to see or to execute is password spraying. How many people have done password spraying attacks, either engagements or against your own organization? More of that. If you have not, go back on Monday and do it. Kick off we want to do this. A password spraying attack, simply put, is the inverse of a brute force attack. I have one username. I'm going to try 1,000 passwords. That's brute force. As soon as I get 5 failed logins, they're going to shut me down. If they're watching for repeat failed logins, they're going to blacklist my IP. If I try a brute force attack, traditional, the chances of me failing are high. But what if I take all the email addresses that I got in OSINT gathering and go against some of these external Microsoft facing, like their Link Discover, their Outlook Web Access? If I start hitting these portals with every username but one password, If there's any shop that is logging people out after one failed login, I guarantee that sysadmin is going to be looking for a job pretty quick. You're going to have pitchforks and torches of users saying this is ridiculously complex security. You got to give me at least 3 tries, 5 tries. So you can usually get away with 2 failed logins on a password spray, and then give it a minute, let the timer reset so you're not tripping any alerts, and come back in and do it later. The password you are most likely to get in with today is summer with a capital S 2018 exclamation point. If that is your password, don't raise your hand, not in this room. But if why would that work? Why is that password so effective?
That quarterly password reset policy.
Yeah, we are telling our users, you have to change your password every 90 days, just like the seasons. And we're also telling them, you have to have at least 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, number, special character. These are complexity requirements. And you can't repeat the password 5 times in a row, right? You've got to have 5 unique passwords before you can use another password again. There's so many organizations that PCI, for example, has dictated, this is password complexity, this is what you're going to do, that we've conditioned our users to use bad passwords. And attackers can take advantage of that. An attacker who comes with variations of the summers, and coming out of Columbus, I've got a handful of sports teams. I know I'm going to get in if I do variations. We're a hockey family, so we do, jackets, and but we've got Crew, we've got Buckeyes, we've got Clippers. That if I get anybody who's local in sports, I'm going to, with time, find the right combination. If I had a reference to the default password that somebody got, company 123, well, when it comes time to change their password, company 124, company 125, right? It gives me an idea where to start to build out that password list. Again, once I throw this attack against an organization, I've got valid creds, and then I can either go into internet-facing web apps or SSL VPN or IPsec VPN, where you're not enforcing 2-factor. I can still get past 2-factor with social engineering, but if you're not enforcing 2-factor, you've saved me a step. I get valid creds, I come in your network, and I can start pillaging. Once you're on the inside, 3 tools that I recommend you play around with in your home labs. Number 1, Mimikatz. Mimikatz is great for give me the stuff out of memory and let me get back to some legit passwords. Kerberoasting, taking advantage of the Kerberoast tickets, and then the PowerShell Empire toolkit. Thank you, Microsoft and Windows 10, for putting PowerShell everywhere. You've given me a lot more tools that I can count on being effective. There's a tool that I did called PowerUp. It was part of PowerSploit, and I don't know if I've got I think the link is right here, PowerShell Mafia, but what PowerUp will do is take a look at running processes and find processes that are running with higher privilege and try to inject commands into those processes, right? I want to take advantage of that privilege to create a local admin account, bounce the process, and when the process starts up again, it includes that command, I think, as a parameter. Some of this is that getting closer to the deep magic that I need to spend more time playing around with these tools, but I have seen these tools used very effectively and very quickly once on the inside, which helps somebody with post-exploitation, right? I can start to move laterally among an organization. I can start to escalate privileges on whatever box I compromise. I mentioned with 2-factor, there's this notion that 2-factor is the savior of all the things. Just put 2-factor in front of it and you're okay. The date on this tweet is June 4th, 2016. So this attack technique just celebrated its 2nd birthday of being in the public space. It was going on longer than that. But if I've got push notification coming to my phone to say, Jerod, are you trying to log in? I click yes, and that's my 2-factor. It works, right? It gives us that 2nd factor that's going to deter most attackers, unless the attacker takes the information they've gathered and they condition the employee to say, hey, this is IT, we're going to be testing some changes to the VPN system, if you see a pop-up on your phone that says, is this you logging in? We wanted you to know that it's us, click yes. And then I do my, my attack with the creds I popped. They get the text, they click yes, because I've already established trust. I've bypassed two-factor authentication. Excuse me. You guys know this guy, right? Do you know what this is? Well, number one, this is his actual Facebook profile pic right now. This is in the public space. I have a Facebook account, so I logged in, went to his profile, and this is what it is. This is a sticky note on his monitor. I don't know what's on that sticky note, in all fairness. I've tried. Fortunately, the picture's grainy enough that you can't tell. He created his account back in 2016, so it's a little older. But for those who don't know him, this man was can I call him a medical professional? Let's just call him a consultant, medical consultant, to one of the most powerful people in the world, right here in the United States. If you can get on site physically, or just watch ESPN, eventually you'll see some interview in some locker room somewhere where somebody's got stuff posted up. You will still find passwords hanging up, whether it's a sticky note on a monitor or under a keyboard, whiteboards in conference rooms where people have passwords about something that they were talking about. You go in and you play that site inspection card. I'm just here to walk around for a little bit and check out some things. You can be real successful. Phone calls. I do not do social engineering. I have all the respect for people who can. I have a really tough time with it. I made a call once. We were doing it was a pen test, and we set up that we were a technology integrator, and the story was that we had been subcontracted by this company to build single sign-on between internal system and this company application. It was a software as a service app that we found through OSINT gathering. And we said, we would call and say, yeah, we've been engaged. I always played the new guy card. You know, I just started, so apologies. I think I'm getting this right. My boss gave me a list of people to call, and your manager gave us your name as somebody to set up in this pilot group. So if you could give me your username and password, I'll go ahead and run it through the system, get you all set up, and then I'll leave you alone for the rest of the day. And the new guy card, because the company was at least a little suspicious, I could be like, I'm sorry, yeah, I tell you what, let me check if I ever had to bail, if I didn't want them to blow my cover. I'll be like, let me check with my manager, see what's going on, I'll get back to you. And then I just move to the next person in the list. I got somebody who sounded like my grandma. And here I am lying to her, picturing my grandma the whole time. I've never gotten over it. So I have a tough time with these phone call social engineering attacks. She did shut me down, by the way. I was very proud of her, even though I have no idea who she is. But if you play that phone call route, build a good script, practice a couple of times so you're comfy, know your ins and know your outs, you might be able to get valid creds that way. And then password reset notification for the software as a service. Were you using, Robbie, Social Engineer's Toolkit, or were you using another tool? Another tool. So Social Engineer Toolkit has a site cloner. There are other tools in the space that do the same. Point it at a website, say make a copy of that website on a server I control, and then when somebody hits your version of the website, you can have it look and feel just like the actual website. You can even, if you want to be polite, redirect the traffic to the website after you capture their creds and log them in so that it doesn't look like anything wonky happened. But if you take advantage of any of these scenarios, you can exploit the creds that you're able to pull from the other examples and start to get somewhere. This one I had a lot of fun with. I already got on my soapbox about the social media quizzes. Password reset portals that are internet facing need more TLC than I think most organizations are giving them. I had an organization I was testing some years back. They had a password reset portal that had been reasonably configured, but it had all the basic questions, right? All the standard questions. And I found that just through exploring the interface, it looked like every user was expected to answer about 10 different questions before they could use password self-service. Not everybody was set up in the system, So I had a subset of people I could go after in the first place. But what I found, because I did when I got there during the first year we were testing, I tried resetting a couple of passwords. 2 failed guesses, and you're locked out of the password reset system. The user account still works fine. No interruption to the user. But you can't reset your password until the help desk manually unlocks your account. So I thought, man, if I've only got 2 chances, I better make sure I've got the right questions. Then what I could do is I could go in and pull up their 2 secret questions and then just hit the back button in the browser. And when I went back in, it would give me another set of secret questions, maybe 2 different, maybe one in the same, one different, but it didn't trigger the lockout. So when I found somebody that I wanted to target, I would just go back and forth until I built a robust enough list of secret questions that I could turn to social media and see if I could find the answers. Now, one, if your favorite, or if your secret question is going to be, what's your favorite sports team? This company was out of New York. Every social media pick one of their network engineers had, he's wearing a New York Giants jersey. So I thought, I've got something to work with here. But the tricky part is, was it Giants? Was it New York Giants? Or was it NY Giants? Those are 3 different strings, and I've only got 2 shots. So I wasn't able to pop his account. But I went through 1 year pen testing. We hit the end of our engagement, and I went back to the guy who brought us in. I said, I wasn't able to get in here, but from a vulnerability management perspective, you have an attack vector here. An attacker with sufficient time and resources will be able to take over somebody's account. Just because I couldn't prove it during the 2 weeks I had here doesn't mean it's not legit. He said, I appreciate that, Jerod. That is a good idea. I'll see what I can do about it. They brought us in next year for a pen test, and I asked him in the kickoff, did you ever fix that password portal? No, we looked at it, and we just didn't see anything to change. All right, that's all I needed to hear. Day 1 of the pen test, I broke my cardinal rule. I went outside of my process and started hammering away at that portal right away. Because I knew, technically, I'd already done the OSINT gathering the previous year. I found an IT director, and I was able to get a couple of questions. I had one question, what year did you graduate high school? Well, I can find that for most anybody in this room. If you're online, if you use social media, I can determine what year you graduated high school. If you don't use social media, I can probably determine what year you graduated high school. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but I'd say 85 to 90%. If you use one of these 2 tools, Family Tree Now and My Life. My Life has changed some of their interface, so they charge more. I don't like to pay for stuff if I don't have to. So I usually take free tools. Family Tree Now, I creep the hell out of my wife. No, you don't have to put anything in with these. You just go out there and give it a name. And I plugged in my wife's name, and I plugged in Ohio. And I said, what do you know about her? And my wife and I have been married for 20 years, and we probably knew each other. This is being recorded. I better get this right. We're coming up on 30 years. 2009. Yeah, we're coming up on 30 years of knowing each other. We don't have secrets. That's just one of the reasons our relationship still works, is because we've been really open with each other. I do not have an Ashley Madison account. But there were some names coming up on my wife's hit on this Family Tree Now. And I'm sitting on the couch toying around. She's on the couch watching TV. And I said, hey, Corey, who's this person? And she thinks for a second, does a double take. She goes, oh my God, that was my babysitter when I was like 4 or 5. How do you know that person? I'm like, don't worry about it. But there's a lot of creepy information out on sites like this. There's even a Reddit post, I need to see if I can find it again, that showed you how to have a lot of these sites like send a take my information out of your service letter to them. But I was going against this IT director at this organization, and found the year he graduated high school. Based on the info I had, it was 1 or 2 years. I was comfy there. And the other questions, initially I thought I was going to get stuck. But one of the questions was, what was your favorite toy as a child? How many of you could even answer that question? I don't know that I could. So we've got a couple. Like I used to have a Stretch Armstrong. that's not the, if I ever answer that question, I don't think I ever have, because I don't know how I would answer it. He was kind of neat, right, until he broke and then bled all that purple goo everywhere, and it was awful. But I don't know how I would answer the question. I thought there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to guess this person's, until I went to his website. IT director, he had his own vanity website, right? Just something he stood up for the stuff he geeked out about. The icon, favorite icon on every web page was a Lego head. So I'm like, all right, let's give that a shot. What's your LEGOS? Enter. What do you want your new password to be? And the thing I didn't like about this gig is we were restricted from 8 to 5. So we couldn't do testing outside of business hours. I'm changing somebody's password in the middle of the workday. Not only that, but it's an IT director at a fairly large organization. And I have no idea what this person's personality is. So I had all my web pages queued up that I found from OSINT gathering. And I had set the expectation rules of engagement that I was going to do this. So I logged into their single factor VPN, took some screenshots, logged into the guy's Outlook Web Access, took some screenshots, a couple of external facing apps. They weren't using a lot of SaaS at the time. Had enough for my pen test report. And then I logged out and I called my guy up and said, hey, you're going to have a very pissed off IT director coming your way as soon as he finds out what happened. Here's what happened. I had to change his password. And it was uncomfortable for him, but it was part of the process. And it was an identity-based weakness. It was this move to self-service as opposed to having the help desk do it, because we got to save money and time. We can't keep bearing the help desk with password resets. If we just give this functionality to our end users, everybody's going to be happier. My favorite attack, I was so proud of myself for this one. It's one of those moments where as a pen tester, you're like, yes! And then you're like, oh, I shouldn't be happy because I just broke something. I had a customer who had it was their customer-facing website. So how they engaged with all the people who gave them money. And they were a Drupal shop. So they used Drupal underneath the website. And these guys were good. From an application security perspective, they were one of the clients I really liked working with because they got it. They did a good job. They had controls along the way to keep themselves honest. But they had built a custom identity management module for user registration, and they wanted it to look and feel like their stuff, and they had specific things they wanted to give their users. So they built this custom module in Drupal. I used my web app proxy again to watch the traffic that went back and forth between my laptop and their servers. And I was seeing in the URL string, now the application the user saw looked different, but what I could see in the proxy logs was website.com/accounts/user/8765309/edit. And so I'm looking at that number and I'm like, all right, I got something to work with here. So 8675308. What if I manually browse to a fuzzed variable, right? I want a different number. And sure enough, I was in somebody else's account. They did not continually check to see whether or not you were authorized to access certain information. They trusted that you wouldn't know that number, that you could force browse to somebody else's account edit page. So as soon as I had that, I didn't even run a fuzzing tool. I went all the way back to 0. Why am I going to go to 0? What's the 0 account likely to be? Yes. And in Drupal, the 0 account is not just admin, but it is super duper God admin. It is like the Zeus account. It is the admin of admins. And I tried to go to that account and trigger the password reset function. And I got an error message that was the equivalent of, there's no way we're letting you change the super duper admin password. That would be stupid for us to expose that externally. I'm like, that's all right. How about account number 1? Doesn't exist. Account number 2 doesn't exist. Account number 3, I got a hit. I did a little LinkedIn recon when I found the user information, and it was a developer who'd been at this company for 10, 15 years. So if a developer is the first person who's created their own account in this application, what are the chances that developer has elevated privileges, right? Has the equivalent of super duper God admin, even though it's their own account. And so I changed their account and got in. And that gave me control of all the application. It gave me all their customer data. And again, this is an organization who understood application security, but they had to do that pen testing on the back end, something a web app scan is not going to find. That's where you need people who do pen testing to get in front of you and say, this is step, 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 how an attacker might do this. But if you allow your applications any kind of self-registration functionality, where anybody on the internet can create their accounts, there may be a legitimate business need where you do that. Understand that it's an attack vector against the identities in the app that somebody might take advantage of. On the inside, I'm not going to go into Responder in great detail, but if I can get on an internal network and get on a box where I can get Responder and run it, I'm just watching traffic and grabbing creds out of the air or off the wire. Again, come out here and take a look at it later, but another way for me to get creds when I'm on the internal network, if I can just get one box, right? If I can get one foothold in the environment, these are the kind of tools that I'm going to be running to try to gather other credentials that might be floating around on the inside. And again, it just takes one. Everything I just went through, all those different examples for pen testers and red teams, an attacker doesn't have to do all that. They just have to get one of those things, and then that's the first domino. That's the first step in doing some real damage to your organization. So the question that, and I think this is critical anytime we talk about this, Robbie, I was real happy to see that this was the crux of your talk, right? This is how I do it. So start thinking about how to defend. We have to talk more and more about defense. And whether you look at it from outside in or you look inside out, I don't care where you start. Just start looking at these things as ways of shutting down those attacks. First thing you should do if you've not done already is analyze your own attack surface. Take all those OSINT gathering tools that I showed you and run your own organizations through them. Again, passive intelligence gathering is not actively interacting or engaging with any systems. You don't have to ask permission. You're not running scans. You are literally going to public sources for public information. There's nothing stopping you from doing that except time and knowledge, and you've got the knowledge now. So do that OSINT gathering against your own organization to start to get a feel for what information has your organization exposed. Do you still have non-production systems on the internet that should have been shut down years ago that you thought somebody shut down, but are still showing up in Shodan logs? And when you navigate, sure enough, that never got decommissioned. It's still a VM floating out there unpatched. Because you have insider knowledge, once you do that information gathering, do some Nmap scans. If you've not done just a simple port scan of your internet-facing systems, do that. Right? What services are listening? What can we interact with? And then do some vulnerability scans. Actually run technology designed to do signature-based vulnerability analysis, because you can do this as an authorized insider. An attacker can't do this without tripping alarms. And if you get all of that information, you've already got enough work on your plate to say, we need to decommission these systems, remediate these vulnerabilities, close these ports, and you're reducing your attack surface. You want to make it as hard as you can for the attacker to do anything if they get creds or if they find an application security weakness. And the next thing I recommend you do, that consolidation, or I'm sorry, the reduction process, this is my short list. So first thing, if you have internet-facing systems that don't need to be there, take them offline. If they don't need to be internet-facing but still need to be there, tweak your external firewall rules to limit who can get to them. Boy, if you start whitelisting applications that, if you've got the capability of whitelisting source IPs, that's a pretty difficult control for somebody to circumvent. Close network ports that don't need to be open. All that metadata stuff you do with FOCA and MetaGoofle, publish updated versions of those files that you've sanitized all the sensitive metadata. If you find any metadata that you would rather not expose externally, you can actually pull that same file down, exact same document, make 0 changes to the content, but strip out the metadata and then publish the more secure version of the file. Again, to make it hard for an attacker to get useful information. Disable inactive accounts. If you've ever talked to an auditor, you've probably had that conversation already. It's easier to do when you look at your internal directory, but every software as a service application you're using is in scope. And there's a good chance that your organization is using software as a service today, and you have abandoned accounts or stale accounts that people can still log into and take access or take advantage of. If nobody's watching those accounts, somebody could be siphoning data off for months, if not years, until you actually shut that access down. And then start taking away unnecessary privileges. In my time in retail, we had maybe 150 people in IT, 180. A lot of that was contractors. But of our population, over 100 people had 24/7 badge access to the data center, including our CIO. They did not need it, right? You like us, yay, let me in. I can do a lot of damage if you're that loose with your access. We, as IT organizations grow over time, it is easier to copy somebody else's account and just give people the ability to do their job, even if it means they have some extra permissions that they don't need. One of the pen test, that's the Jerod, it's almost time to shut up message because pizza's coming. One of the pen tests I was on, guy got on the internal network and found a company all share. If you have a company all share, don't raise your hand, but check it out next week. See what you can find on that company all share. He did a little bit of digging and found that HR was using that as their departmental share, and found social security numbers for everybody who had been hired at the company for like the last 5 years. Yeah, we could have been done there, Robbie. That could have been the end of the test. He kept going because nobody knew he was doing it. He did that, though, with a standard user account, a user who had no right to access that data. So there was a privilege question there about what's this account for and what does it have access to. Do some sort of user attestation where you go through, don't ask IT to do it, business. Hey, manager of department X, here are all the people who have access to the HR application. Is that list legit? And use that as a data cleanup to kind of take this organic growth, right? IT has grown year on year on year. Step back, take a look and say, where do we need to kind of pull back and consolidate and shut down what somebody could do if they take advantage of one of our user accounts. Multi-factor on all the things does have value. You've got to teach people about that social engineering attack, but don't say, well, if they're going to get in, they're going to get in, and ignore multi-factor. But not just VPN. I'm multi-factor personally to my Google account, to my social media accounts, to my GitHub account. If a website I log into supports multi-factor, I've turned it on. And even if it's just SMS multi-factor, it's better than nothing. And I have a website that I built that is about teaching people how to get into information security. I built it years ago, and I stood up a Twitter account, so it's different from mine. And all the Twitter account talks about is this website and how people can use it. Last week, somebody from Indonesia logged into my Twitter account. And shame on me because I hadn't turned two-factor on that one. Now, I've done two-factor on everything else over the years, but I haven't used that one in a couple of years, and I'm like, who cares? Who's going to watch it? Well, that page actually shows up front page of Google for people pursuing their SSCP certification. And because it's got front page visibility for one stupid little thing, it's got attention of people. I use WordFence because it's a WordPress site. And I see people trying to brute force into this web page all the time because they know if I have visitors, they can put malicious content or ads or something on the website and take advantage of that traffic. So two-factor everywhere, folks, not just VPN, but software as a service. And then security awareness training. Teach people about using corporate email for personal sites, not oversharing on social media, and how to detect and respond to social engineering. It's important that your people know not to engage the social engineer. Let IT handle it. Let security handle it. Don't have the end user do that. That puts them in an unfair position. With your admin privileges, sorry, my kids and I live on Reddit and meme economy, and I wanted to have some fun. If you can have different password policies for different accounts, you can minimize the impact to users, but still protect the privileged accounts. Right? Take a traditional user account, 8-character complex, fine. With our administrative accounts and our service accounts, that's what a pen tester is going to go after. 20 characters complex. if they're going to try to crack it, make it hard, if not impossible, for them to crack, depending on what kind of rig they're running. Are you using laps? So if you're not, this will be my one takeaway for people. This is great at shutting down lateral movement. Local administrator password solution from Microsoft. It's free. You pull it down, you say, I want different admin passwords on all my workstations, and suddenly when an attacker gets on one box and tries to go to another, they're stuck because now they have to go through that process of cracking that admin password again. And getting to a point where if you could take away passwords from your admins, it gets kind of scary. Back in my public utility days, we were doing some privileged account management. Unix admins and Windows admins alike hated that. Tread lightly there. You can put stuff in place that keeps changing passwords on a regular basis and makes it hard for an attacker to compromise privileged accounts. If you disrupt your admins so much that they can't do their job, you're doing harm. So again, look into it, but tread lightly. And then the last section here, I'm just going to burn through these last few slides. Logging and monitoring. If you know what bad activity looks like, if you're going through all this defense activity, if you're doing the red team exercises so you can see what an attacker looks like, watch the logs. Because you will have very clear, specific examples of what you should be alerting on. Stuff that's going to be an actual attacker. So the next few slides are all Lenny Zeltser. Lenny Zeltser and Anton Chuvakin put together these incident response cheat sheets and checklists. If these are the only things you are watching for in your logs, you're already worlds ahead. It's the kind of stuff of like somebody being added to a local admin group, a new user account being created. It's out on Zeltser.com at cheat sheets. It's a security incident log review checklist. It's a few years old, but it's still a fantastic resource. It's a great starting point. And then the last thing I'd offer up is misdirection. Deliberately fake credentials, tickets. I mean, you've heard honeypot technology, right? A server that looks too good to be true. And if anybody tries to interact with it, they're an attacker because it's not legitimate. There's no user at the company. There's no customer who ever needs to interact with that server. Take it one step further with canary credentials, right? Fake credentials that don't do anything and don't go anywhere. But if you ever see that credential set used in logs, you'll automatically identified an attacker. It takes a lot of the noise off the table and it makes incident response crazy simple. So my last comments, I pulled this out of the NIST cybersecurity framework. Keep things simple, but look the whole circle, right? Prevention, detection, response, recovery. You want to get into a cycle of these are attacks that people are launching against our apps, our identities. And then these are how the processes and technologies we use to detect it. And then when we detect it, these are the actions we take. And then keep the cycle going, because that helps you get momentum behind protecting yourself against what I am seeing is some of the more common, prevalent attacks, not just in a pen tester space, but in publicly disclosed data breach activity. I mentioned I've got all this stuff out online. I have links to stuff I talk about in here. This is me. You'll find me online as Slondal. It's Irish for security. Also Guinness and Jameson's. If anybody ever bumps into me out in public and you want to buy me a drink, I will not be offended. But if you go to SlideShare or SpeakerDeck, you can get this exact slide deck, and you can hit me up on any of these other resources. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I try to stay active on Twitter, but I have to kind of stay away or I get sucked into some of the noise. I still have stuff I got to get done during the day. But I'll be around if you want. I'm not going to keep you. We're 3 minutes past.
We're still waiting on pizza, so.
All right, so as pizza's coming then, questions. Is there anything that you want to ask that you're not afraid to ask in front of 40 of your closest friends?
I have a question on this slide about reducing attack surface.
Okay.
In some cases, what your take on inability to do this simply because there is no policies. Maybe it needs to start from properly implementation of policies.
Yeah.
And next follow all your steps in implementing.
Yeah, if you could, and I know, let me ask the question this way. Is anybody blacklisting passwords in Active Directory? Sorry? How do you do it? Okay. It's tricky. I've seen it done like aftermarket. You can get applications that provide you more controls around directory administration. And I know there are a lot of tools in the space that do that. You do have to get to a point. If you did get to a point that you're able to blacklist some common passwords, the process that I'd recommend, I don't go through that in detail in this talk. If you are internal, and it depends on the relationship you have with the Windows sysadmins, if you can get the password database for Active Directory, right? And use, what would you use? Brutus? Hashcat. Yeah. Throw Hashcat against it. You don't even have to have a password cracking rig if you're doing it over time, like something with a GPU card. I don't do a lot of password cracking. That's, well, yeah,
So we do a lot of password cracking. I was going to actually say, to go along with what you're talking about for blacklisting.
Right.
We've done statistics on like everything that we've cracked. We found top 3 are password with special characters. Password variations, right? And variations on company name and variations on sequence.
So variations on the word password,
Yeah.
variations on the company name, and variations on seasons.
Yeah, those are the top 3.
And that's Robbie's advice as somebody who does this day to day, cracking passwords, is he's seeing that. So if you're seeing that in your test, chances are you guys have that same exposure in your own organizations.
Yeah, we crack NTDS, which is the password vault for Active Directory. We crack some that have been 30,000 users and up. So we have a large number of passwords that we've cracked over years. And those are the statistics.
Those are the ones that come out.
Yeah, towards the top.
And if you do that at your own organization, which that's terrific advice, some of the general. If you go through that process of using Hashcat to crack NTDS at your own org, you'll get a pretty clear picture of how people have developed their own cultural password management and construction policies. And you can put together a really effective short list that's going to close some of those gaps. But I think it's more valuable once you start down that path of teaching people maybe passphrases or something. My password is, like, for my laptop at work, is 25 characters long. And it's just a short sentence, but if somebody tries to crack it with Hashcat, it's going to be a 20-character complex string because it doesn't have the intelligence to know that it's just dictionary words. But that would be